is it's easier to put the bike in,
Yeah.
but you can lean it up against whatever wall you need to clean it. We are big fans of power washers, but it's not necessarily, it's just for the ease and convenience of using a power washer. If you have a common garden hose, it works the same way. Basically what you're going to want to do is start, and it's going to get a little loud with the power washer, so I do apologize. But you're basically going to get the bike wet, get any sort of big dirt off the bike. So again, you don't have to use a power washer, but if you have one, you can. The one thing I would say about power washers though, is you don't want to start blowing really close to the bike in where the bearings are on the bike. So there's going to be bearings in the rear wheel, and what's called the bottom bracket, front wheel, and then up here in the headset. You don't want to start, blowing large amounts of water, high pressure water into those areas, because those, again, there's grease in those bearings. You don't want to blow the grease out of those bearings. So garden hose, no problem. It's not a high enough pressure to do that. But if you are using a power washer, just be careful. The other thing as well is if you have a power washer that's designed like a gas operated one or one with a really high PSI, don't use it. This is 1600, that's probably as high as you want to go for a power washer. If you have an industrial one or one that's used for like cleaning like sidewalks, things like that, like grid off sidewalks, like 3200 PSI, things like that, that's going to blow the paint right off of this guy, so don't use that. 1600 is fine, that's a common household one, even less is even better. So we're just going to get the bike wet. So I'm just getting it initially wet just to get sort of big dirt chunks off, things like that. What you're going to do now is we're going to basically degrease the drivetrain. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take some sort of degreaser. We use what's called citrus degreaser here, but any drivetrain cleaner, like bike-specific drivetrain cleaner, will actually do a little bit of a better job. The only reason we don't use that is because we use such high quantities of this stuff that it's just, we obviously want to sell it to you guys, so we just can't get it. So we just buy citrus degreaser, but if you were to get like muck-off drivetrain cleaner, for example, it's actually a lot better to do the job to clean it than citrus degreaser. But if you're stuck or you just want to get citrus degreaser, it works either way. It just, sometimes one works better than the other. So what you're going to do now is you're going to spray your degreaser onto the gearing. So what we do is spray it onto the bike here, spin the crank backwards. Again, you can have this up against the wall to do this. You don't have to have it on a stand. You just want to be able to spin the crank backwards to do it. So just have it freed up so you can spin the crank backwards. But yeah, spinning the crank, you're going to spray the derailleur. Anything that the chain touches really is going to get the dirtiest. So you want to spray in those areas. And sort of the key here with any degreaser is to let it sit for like a minute and a half, to let the degreaser do its job and break down the gunk. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to take a brush, and we're going to start scrubbing it to loosen all that dirt. And then the final step is we're going to take a power washer or any garden hose and blow that all the way off. It's going to
I've
make it
seen
nice
some
and
people,
shiny.
they've got this plastic kit that they put on the chain and then they clean the chain. What's
That's
that?
another option. So that is a chain cleaner.
Yeah.
Again, that is another easy way to clean the chain.
Yeah.
There's many techniques to clean bikes. This is one of the easier ones to do because all it requires. The chain clean is one, yes. This one method we're using now is a very easy way to do it because all it requires is degreaser, some sort of water source, and a brush, and that's it. You can get the cleaner. It will make your chain a lot cleaner when you use it that way. The only thing is it's kind of not a hassle per se, it just takes longer to do, right? You got to set up the whole thing and sprint it backwards and all that.
I know, but some people, they don't have a house. I'm staying in a condominium, so...
Exactly. So on that note, if you are, let's say in an apartment or you don't have access to water, there are various ways you can get around that. I'll show you at the end of the day, but there is a battery operated power washer that draws water from a bucket. So you don't need a water source other than a bucket, and you can get power washing for your bike. It's actually what I use, because again, I'm in an apartment, so I don't have access to a hose. So it's made by Works. It's like one of the battery operated ones, like $150. It's a little expensive, but it lasts a long time, and it draws water from the bucket, and you can spray it onto the bike, and it's actually really nice.
Question. We have electronic shifting.
Yeah.
Is it okay to wash that?
Yes, all electronic shifting, as long as the wires are plugged in. So this one is wired. It's still electronic, but it's wired, a little different than the wireless one we had downstairs. As long as it's plugged in, it's got an IPX7 rating, so that means it can take abuse.
One other question: if you want to take your bike to a bike depot for a service, how much they would charge for it?
It's $45.
Worth it.
So, do I need to pop out the batteries from the SRAM Red or no?
Worth it.
When the batteries are installed, they are waterproof. When they're not installed, it's not waterproof.
I'm doing it.
Another
Group discount?
another quick question
Yeah.
is that like when for example I tried to clean my bike, and after cleaning the bike the brakes doesn't work that well the way they used to work before.
Kind of brakes.
Same hydraulic
Disc brakes.
disc brakes, right?
Yeah.
Now, I looked into it, and it's like whenever you're power washing your derailleur and stuff, sometimes the grease goes on the disc brakes, and then
Can happen. So if you were noticing, what I was doing is I wasn't spraying directly
Yeah, you were
this
not.
way.
Yeah.
I was spraying from the back this way. So any gunk that were to come off of the derailleur and the cassette and the chain would go off this way. Again, you are using a power washer or a garden hose. When you are cleaning it, just make sure that you are cleaning all the way around that area. So if there was any grease or stuff that got onto this area, that you're going to wash it away. What you don't want to do is start using the brake when there's still gunk all over your bike. So I'm actually not using the brake right now. I'm just basically, because the last thing you want is, because the rotors aren't, the pads themselves, which are organic, and that's what's picking up the gunk and going to cause the poor braking.
Yeah.
They're actually not touching anything right now. They're most likely not going to get contaminated from you just spraying stuff around this area. What's going to get contaminated is the rotor, this bit here, right? As soon as the pads touch that contaminated rotor, it's done. The pads are contaminated. You either have to sand them or replace them.
oh,
So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to touch the brake. I'm going to leave it as is. And this only applies for hydraulic disc brakes, or any disc brake actually.
How long
If
do
you-
we wait until it dries up?
I'm not letting it dry out. Basically what I was doing is I was just spraying it onto the, for the disc brake. Once we're done here, we clean it off with the rest of the water, you're good to use your brakes again. Right?
is
We're
there
just-
any good way to cover that?
There are company Muck-Off sells a disc brake cover. I've never found a use for it, but if you're worried about it, you can get one. It just basically covers the rotor in like a wetsuit material type thing. Like
Okay.
and it'll cover the rotor and prevent any sort of gunk from getting off.
After washing this, then you put the oil, right?
I tried
Yeah,
that
so
also.
we're gonna get there in a second. So now that we've let this sit, we've let the degreaser sit, what it's gonna do is gonna break down all the gunk and dirt and grease that was on the drivetrain. We're gonna spray a little bit extra to give us something to push back against. And now what we're gonna do, again, you can have this up against the wall. We're gonna take our brush and we're gonna run it and try and loosen that dirt up as much as possible. So I'm spinning it backwards and going back and forth.
Yeah. So,
Don't forget anything the chain touches, right? So there's pulley wheels down here that the chain touches. Everyone can see that, right? These parts here, those are gonna get really gunky. So you're gonna wanna scrub those down as well. If you're on one gear and you're doing it, you may wanna shift down a little bit so that you can get the cog that the chain was sitting on, because you're not cleaning that cog if the chain is on it. So again, run through it again. And then this side here, I like scrubbing the chain when it's on the chain ring here, because it gives you something to push back against. So you can get the chain nice. And again, the whole point here is we're loosening the dirt, so it might not look clean, but once we apply the power washer to it, that's going to blow all this gunk that we basically made loose with the brush off. Get in behind. Like this. It is a little bit of a dirty job, but your bike is going to thank you for it when you do it. It's going to make things last a lot longer. So now that we've done this, we've basically cleaned everything up. We're going to take our power washer again, and we're basically going to spray it onto the gearing here and everything that we just basically degreased. And the goal here, again, it doesn't require a lot of force to get this stuff off. Once we once we loosened it with the dirt, so even a garden hose will be able to get
Yeah, I
most of the
was
crap
just
off.
going to ask.
But you don't need a power washer; just a garden hose will be
Is
able
it
to.
jet a garden hose with a jet head or just a
Yeah, just with
regular
your finger.
Yeah,
shower?
I would say if you're going to use a garden hose, get something with a head that can do sort of a
Yeah.
steady stream spray.
Yeah.
Just using a garden hose without a head is not really going to provide the pressure that you need. So yes, on that note, get something that you would use to water plants or things like that, right? And then yeah, so basically you're just going to spray it. And we can see how that is a lot cleaner than what it was
Wow.
before. Right, so that is the power of the power washer and the degreaser, but again, a garden hose is going to get the same job done. The key is to let the degreaser sit for like a minute and a half to break down that gunk, so it's just going to fly right off once you apply water and you scrub it with the brush as well. So now that we've gotten the drive chain clean, what we would do in this scenario is you would use a bucket of some sort, fill it with water and dishwasher soap. Dishwasher soap is a degreaser. It is also safe for your frame as well, so there's nothing that's going to cause issues with removing paint or damaging anything on the frame, like carbon, for example. So dishwasher soap, a bucket, and a sponge. You would fill that up. I don't have it here right now, but we would fill that up, and then basically we would take our sponge, and we're just going to start wiping down the bike with the dishwasher soap and the sponge, in all areas, frames, wheels, that sort of thing. Covering it in soap. Once it's covered in soap, take your water source again, spray it off. That way you clean the frame and the wheels. The drivetrain's clean, you're done. One thing I would suggest is don't store it wet. So either if you're outside, let it sit in the sun to dry. If it's the winter, for example, or you're cleaning your bike and it's not really sunny or it's raining outside, bring it inside or try and wipe it down as best as possible if someone's not letting you bring it inside, for example. So you don't want to leave things wet because there's metal parts. Metal parts will rust if they're wet, right? So again, sunlight is a really good dryer, so I just leave my bike for like 10 minutes out in the sun, and then I just take a quick rag and wipe it down, and it's good to go. So at this point,
What if we had what do you call it, this car wash soap?
that works as well. Again, it's expensive to use on a bike, but you can if you want. Dishwasher soap is very inexpensive, but if you want to use if you got lots of car cleaner on you, you can use car cleaner. That works either way. But anything that has some sort of degreaser that would be used to clean the front.
Where did you say you want to be careful not to spray directly, like in between?
So
the
if you're
tire
using a
there?
garden hose, it really doesn't matter. If you're using a power washer, you don't want to just start spraying water continuously in the area of the hub here, the bottom bracket where the cranks turn here, the headset where the handle will turn here, and then obviously the front hub. Those are the areas
So
with bearings.
if you're spraying degreaser like in the crank in the front over there, there's a hole. You don't want
You don't want to let it sit for like an hour because then it's going to seep through. So all these bearings have seals in them, and there's grease as well to prevent them from causing it to lose the grease. What you don't want to do is you don't want to let it sit for too long or continuously start spraying things because then that way it's going to seep its way into the seal and cause issues. What you don't want to do with the power washer as well is continuously spray it. So if I take a power washer and I'm just willingly just spraying it here for like 30 seconds, that's going to cause an issue. If you start going by it a little bit, not a huge issue because you're probably not getting that steady stream of water to make it through that seal. But if you're just sitting there like willy-nilly trying to like get something off of the bike and you're spraying it right on the bearing, that's going to be a problem. It's going to prematurely wear out those bearings because it's going to blow the grease out of them, and the bearings need grease to run smooth.
And how often do we get to the greasing?
If you're really anal, after every ride.
Really?
But see, that's the thing, is if you clean your bike consistently, it doesn't get dirty and it makes the cleaning job way quicker.
No, I meant grease. To grease the bearings.
For the bearings themselves?
Yeah.
Sorry. Once they wear out. So you bring it to a mechanic and they'll be able to tell you if they wear out or not.
Oh.
Yeah. It takes a little bit of knowledge to know once they're worn out or not. There's a feeling to the bearings. So for example, all of this stuff to feel where the bearings are, you would have to take off a bunch of bike parts, get into where the bearings are and start feeling them to see, okay, are they rough? If they're spinning rough, that means that the bearings are starting to wear. So it requires a lot of tools and knowledge to remove parts to do it. So if you're worried about bearings wearing out, just say, hey, are my bearings worn out? We'll check for you and say, okay, yes, no, you need a replacement. If they're really worn out, some stuff will start happening to your bike.
Or even to grease them. How often do we have to, or can we grease them?
Because they're sealed bearings.
Do we have to open them to grease them?
Most bikes these days are disposable cartridge seal bearings.
Oh.
They're in a disposable roll, unfortunately. So it's take the old bearings out, put the new ones in.
Okay.
Some older bikes, for example, use what's called a cup and cone system, where there's ball bearings inside of a race. You would take the old ball bearings out, put new ones in, and re-grease that area, but that's only on older bikes. Most bikes, most modern bikes these days have sealed cartridge hubs, bottom brackets, and headsets. So you just take the old cartridge bearing out, and you will put a new one in as a replacement. On that note, if your bearings are really, really worn out, some crazy stuff will start happening with your bike. For example, the wheels will start wobbling side to side. That's an indication that bearings are out. Same thing with the crank. The crank will start wobbling side to side. The headset might start feeling really rough, or what's called pitted. Pitted basically means there's one bearing that's not round anymore. So it'll just, if you were to spin the headset, it will like notch into place because it's sitting on that not round bearing. But those are like way down the line if you don't take care of your bike and you ride the crap out of it. It's at a point where it's not going to catastrophically fail, but it's going to be like not the safest thing to do. Question?
So after you degrease the chain and everything, each time you degrease, you have to loop the chain, right?
That's correct, yes. So when you are, after you clean your bike, what you're going to do and after you dry it is you're going to apply a fresh coat of lube on the chain. You only need to put lube on the chain because the chain will basically carry that lube across all the other parts of the bike and then distribute that lube evenly. So we're going to go downstairs and quickly show you how to do that. But it is super important that after you clean your drive chain that you lube it. The last thing you want to do is ride a drivetrain with no oil. It's metal on metal. If it's metal on metal that's dry, it's going to make really terrible noises and going to wear things out prematurely. So once you're done cleaning, you're going to lube, and that's part of the preventative maintenance in the future. For cleaning your bike, like I said, if you clean it often, this job won't take a very long time to do because there's not a lot of accumulative gunk on the bike. Now, I'm a very terrible person as an example because I haven't cleaned my bike in 6 months. I am very lazy. So, and I know how to clean my bike properly in the future, so if I ever really needed to do it, I'll clean it. But if you want to keep the length of your bike, keep things from wearing out prematurely, cleaning it often will help with that. If you clean it after every ride, it might take you 5 minutes. If you clean it every week, maybe 10, 15 minutes. If you clean it every 6 months, probably going to take me an hour to get my bike all nice and shiny. So again, it just really depends. If you start adding a bunch
It's
of
like
gunk
taking
on
a
top-
shower and a bath. Difference.
Yeah. So we're done here. Again, like it's a little dirty because we haven't used the soap and water, but when you use the soap and water, you'll go around, you'll clean all that, no problem. We've wiped the frame down as well, which we'll go do downstairs. We're all going to turn around. We're all going to head back downstairs, and I'll show you guys how to loop the bike. Okay.